Hello and welcome to 7 Days in Europe, where we look at issues in the headlines and discuss them with leading MEPs. And of course the biggest headline remains the sovereign debt crisis and whether or not the euro can be saved. To talk about that, with me first is my guest, a Greek member of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, Theodoros Skylakakis. And before we go any further, in fact, do you think the euro can be saved?
Yes, of course. There is no fundamental problem of not saving the euro. The economic fundamentals of Europe and eurozone are good, not bad. So it's just political decisions that have to be made.
OK, well, as usual, we're going to start 7 Days today with our yes-no segment, in which I pose a series of questions to which my guest can only answer yes or no. Do you feel the Sarkozy-Merkel plan has promise for saving the euro?
Yes.
What about the treaty changes? They seem to think the treaty changes are necessary. Mr Van Rompuy doesn't. Do we need to change the treaties?
Yes.
Will it be possible to do that, given the opposition to everything at the moment in some of the countries that are most affected?
Yes.
What about it was France and Germany, after all, that broke the Stability and Growth Pact the last time. Can we trust them this time?
No.
Standard & Poor have threatened to downgrade all of the eurozone countries. Is that worrying?
Yes and no.
Fair answer. A French professor has said that the European Parliament has done too little. Watch the train go by, was his expression. Is he right?
Yes.
Can you see Greek bonds recovering within the next 3 years?
No.
Are you happy to have your country run by an ex-Goldman Sachs economist?
Wrong question.
What about Italy, also run by an ex-Goldman Sachs man? We've run out of time, I'm afraid. That's it. Very informative anyway. I like the yes-no bit too. We'll take a look now, though, at some of the stories in the news today with Caroline Grasso.
Situation critique pour la zone euro. Jeudi, les 27 devaient se prononcer face à la proposition franco-allemande de réforme des traités. Parmi leurs propositions, des sanctions plus automatiques pour les mauvais élèves en cas de déficit excessif. Face au manque de réactivité de l'Union européenne, l'agence Standard & Poor's menace de dégrader la note de 15 pays de la zone euro, dont la France et l'Allemagne. En Europe, les règles de circulation des deux roues sont trop complexes et ne garantissent ni le respect de l'environnement, ni la sécurité de leurs usagers. Le Parlement européen a fait des propositions lundi pour améliorer la situation.
Now we have to work with more than 30 regulations and of the 1st of January 2014, just one.
Si les motos légères concernent seulement 2% des distances parcourues, elles sont impliquées dans 16% des accidents mortels. Parmi les propositions figure par exemple l'obligation d'installer un système ABS sur chaque moto. Les eurodéputés de la Commission des libertés ont voté oui ce lundi au permis de travail unique pour les migrants. Objectif: simplifier les procédures et garantir des droits sociaux équivalents entre les travailleurs européens et ceux qui viennent des pays tiers. Un moyen aussi de lutter contre l'immigration illégale. C'est bientôt la fin de l'année européenne du bénévolat. Environ 100 millions de personnes, soit 1 sur 5, prêtent leur service en tant que volontaires en Europe, mais de manière encore très inégale. 40% des gens sont concernés en Grande-Bretagne, en Suède et aux Pays-Bas, tandis que seuls 10% des Italiens ou des Bulgares donnent de leur temps gratuitement. L'année prochaine, place à l'année européenne du vieillissement actif.
Just a reminder, you're watching 7 Days in Europe, and my studio guest is Theodoros Skylakakis. Looking at the plight that the euro is in at the moment, do you feel that the plan that seems to be on the table from Sarkozy and Merkel does have a chance of restoring things properly?
Not if it's not an addition in terms of some kind of guarantee for the sovereign debt all over Europe. You can never solve this crisis only by fiscal discipline. You need discipline and solidarity.
The people of, obviously, your own country, Greece, but also of Portugal, Spain, Italy, Ireland, are annoyed at the austerity measures. They feel they're picking up the tab for a mistake made by the bankers. They're not going to accept treaty changes, are they? Because presumably they'd have to be subject to referenda.
I don't presume that. If you look at the procedures, it can also go all over Europe without referendum, without any referendum. And it's different. In our case, it was not the bankers, it was the politicians that did the big damage, because it was huge amounts of money that were spent during the past 10 years, and huge debts were created. So people react for different reasons. But still, it's a very, very difficult situation, and we can only restore confidence in Greece if we restore confidence in Europe. At this moment, our economy is dropping because there is lack of confidence also in Europe.
Because even Germany is finding it quite hard to sell its bonds at the moment, partly because people can get better rates from the slightly more dangerous countries.
Yes, but I don't think there is a real problem for Germany, to be realistic. But the real problem from Germany will come because the loss of confidence all over Europe will have a huge effect on its export industry, because they are selling to everybody else. So if people stop buying because of loss of confidence in the economy, then the Germans will suffer as well.
Because Standard & Poor have threatened to downgrade all of the eurozone countries, which should we take any notice, though, because they were completely wrong at the time of 2007, 2008 and 2009?
Yeah, and I would also add that they were very, very confident about all European economies till the crisis. So, look, the markets we have to convince. If we are convincing to the markets, the rating agencies have no influence at all. The problem is that we are not convincing the markets, and that's because we are not decisive in confronting political costs within our own countries.
Have we taken too long, have the leaders of Europe taken too long to get to grips with this? And if you like, done it a little bite at a time, rather than having a sort of a shock and awe type of solution?
Well, you know, in Europe we negotiate a lot. And I think this is part of a huge negotiation, both within the countries and between countries. But we have to realize that the cost, the transaction cost, as we economists call it, the cost of negotiating, at sometimes is much more than the benefits of the outcome. And this is one of the cases.
It's been suggested that the European Parliament also sat back, as I mentioned in our yes-no part. A professor has said that the European Parliament sat back and watched the train go by and didn't do enough. And yet, I can remember dozens and dozens of debates about it.
Yes, but the European Parliament institutionally at this moment is the weaker part, because it did not have any say in the policies of the various countries that came to the problem. And also didn't have any say in the initial treaties that were obviously not good enough to handle this case. We have to remember that the real problem was the intergovernmental aspect of the Union. ECOFIN and Eurogroup were supposed to never let this thing to happen, and because they wanted to exchange favors between politicians that had elections, they all break the rules.
Will they continue to do that? And
they will. If we have an intergovernmental solution, there will be no solution at all.
OK, well, that takes us out of time, I'm afraid. Theodoros Skylakakis, thank you very much indeed for taking part. It's time for me now to say goodbye to you and hello to our next guest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, hello and welcome to a French member of the Greens, Michèle Rivasi, who's here to discuss the plans to revise the so-called Seveso II Directive on the dangers from the manufacture and storage of hazardous substances on industrial premises. But as before, we'll start with 1 minute of questions to which my guest must answer yes or no, or in this case, oui ou non. Donc, les nouvelles en provenance de la Conférence des Nations Unies sur le changement climatique à Durban sont-elles décevantes?
Oui.
Et surprenant?
Oui.
Si le Canada se retire de Kyoto, comme le dit la rumeur, les autres vont-ils suivre?
Il y a des chances.
Et pensez-vous que les pays développés réalisent les risques pour les pays et les îles pauvres?
Je pense qu'il y a un problème pour les pays en voie de développement, dont les îles.
S'en soucient-ils? Oui. Okay. L'Union européenne ne représente que 14% des émissions de CO2. Cela peut-il affecter le climat mondial?
Oui.
La Chine, le plus gros pollueur, a offert à réduire ses émissions si les pays développés font de même. Le pourront-ils?
Oui.
N'est-ce pas là une manœuvre cynique de la Chine, sachant que ses revendications ne seront pas respectées?
Oui.
La crise financière a-t-elle un effet sur la volonté de réduire les émissions?
Oui.
We've run out of time, I'm afraid, so thank you very much indeed for taking part in our short section of Yes, No. OK, now before we get to our discussion proper, let's first of all watch this report on the Seveso II updating by Maria Maggiori.
Era un sabato, a fine produzione, c'era un serbatoio che si era surriscaldato nella fabbrica chimica ecmesa del gruppo La Roche-Gévaudan. Il surriscaldamento ha portato all'esplosione di fatto del reattore per una decina di giorni addirittura. L'incidente è stato nascosto fino a che non si sono osservate delle cose strane, appunto cadute di foglie dagli alberi perché il triclorofenolo è un defoliante, morte di animali da cortile e problemi cutanei, soprattutto a carico dei bambini.
Siamo nel bosco delle Querce, nato sulle ceneri dell'incidente di Seveso. Damiano Di Simine era un bambino quando un reattore dell'impresa farmaceutica ecmesa esplose. Era il 10 luglio del 1976. A Seveso, un paese a 15 km da Milano, si liberò nell'aria un'enorme nube di diossina. Ma l'impresa non dichiarò subito la gravità delle sostanze disperse nell'atmosfera e le autorità locali non informarono la popolazione. Poi arrivarono le evacuazioni forzate, la zona fu bonificata e le case circostanti distrutte. Oggi Damiano presiede l'ufficio di Milano di Legambiente. Dopo 40 anni la situazione è molto cambiata?
Il rischio non si può mai annullare. Il sistema in sé funzionerebbe. Il problema è superare gli ostacoli che derivano in molti casi dalla riottosità, per esempio degli enti locali, di rendere note situazioni di pericolo alla popolazione.
Dall'incidente del 76 2 direttive regolano il rischio di incidenti industriali. Come funziona il sistema Seveso oggi? Innanzitutto con un censimento delle imprese a rischio. In Europa ne sono state censite circa 10.000, classificate secondo il livello di pericolo incidente. Siamo andati a visitare una delle aziende sottoposte a regime Seveso. La Sipcam produce agrofarmaci, pesticidi, diserbanti, concimi. Occupa una superficie di 300.000 metri quadrati in mezzo ai paesini nella provincia di Milano. Qui viene speso il 3% del fatturato in sicurezza e il rischio incendio è altissimo.
Questa macchina ha tutto un sistema di paratie che si ferma quando l'operatore apre per mantenere l'operatore in situazione di totale sicurezza.
La Sipcam ha presentato un piano di emergenza interno ed uno esterno in caso di incidente con danni al di fuori del proprio territorio e i controlli avvengono.
Ne abbiamo avuti 272 dal 2000 ad oggi. Questo vuol dire mediamente 25 volte all'anno, una volta ogni 15 giorni, o l'ARPA, o l'ASL, o i Vigili del Fuoco, o il Ministero vengono a controllare il nostro stabilimento.
I rischi maggiori, lo dicono gli esperti, vengono più dalle piccole imprese che sfuggono ai controlli che dalle grandi aziende che hanno i mezzi per investire nella prevenzione. Ma le autorità locali come fanno i controlli? Edoardo Bai di Legambiente.
Fanno solo un controllo, che è quello del sistema di gestione della sicurezza.
E lo fanno?
Lo fanno in maniera formale, cioè si siedono in ufficio e fanno un'audizione, no?
Invece di andare lì...
Un audit.
L'ARPA, l'Agenzia per la Protezione dell'Ambiente, è uno dei responsabili di questi controlli. Qui arrivano i piani di emergenza inviati dalle imprese. Da qui partono in teoria i tecnici che si recano nelle varie imprese Seveso. Il monitoraggio è costante sulle ipotesi di incidente.
Questo qui è un caso di un'azienda che viene riconosciuta in Seveso perché ha qualche struttura, qualcosa qui che può provocare un danno. Ci sono 3 aree di impatto che sono la zona di impatto sicuro, la zona di impatto a diversa gravità, in cui vengono attivate dei provvedimenti di evacuazione.
E la popolazione viene informata?
Lì dipende dalla dinamicità del sindaco, dal grado di disponibilità anche di personale, di conoscenze finanziarie, dal grado anche di sensibilità personale.
Ecco il problema del sistema Seveso oggi. Bisognerebbe informare la popolazione sul da farsi prima che scoppi un incidente, ma pochi, tra comuni e prefetture, lo fanno.
Michèle Rivasi, the changes demanded in the report by János Áder mainly reflect the more detailed classification system required by the United Nations, and yet the new report is blocked in the Council. Why?
Yeah, it's blocked because, parce que, si vous voulez, il y a la Commission qui avait fait une proposition pour classifier les installations, mais le Conseil, notamment 4 pays, qui sont l'Autriche, l'Allemagne, l'Italie, et un autre pays, qui refuse complètement et qui voulait avoir une réglementation plus laxiste. C'est pour ça que, comme on est sous présidence polonaise, et que la Commission ainsi que le Parlement n'acceptent pas ce blocage pour avoir, vous voyez, une directive plus laxiste, eh bien, on attend maintenant la présidence danoise.
Well, since the Seveso incident in 1976, that's 35 years ago, there have been a number of other industrial accidents involving hazardous or toxic chemicals. Most recently, of course, the disaster at the alumina plant in Hungary. Does the EU have the weapons, the tools to prevent that from happening?
Mais oui, normalement, cette directive Seveso doit prévenir l'accident et bien quantifier les substances chimiques qu'il y a à l'intérieur. Vous voyez, le tonnage et la toxicité. Et ensuite, on doit faire des contrôles. Et là, il y a toute une discussion parce qu'on voulait que sur les très toxiques, il y ait au moins 2 contrôles par an. On a obtenu 1 contrôle par an et sur les moins toxiques, 3 contrôles. Et puis, il faut informer la population qui est autour. Et le problème, c'est que souvent, les industriels ne veulent pas informer. Et puis, il faut qu'il y ait je dirais, des plans particuliers s'il y a, par exemple, un accident. Et ça, il faut que ça soit connu du grand public. Et là, on sent bien qu'ils font tout pour ne pas informer la population et les autorités locales.
Is there a way that the EU can stop, with new laws perhaps, further incidents like Seveso, Bhopal or indeed Buncefield in the UK?
Écoutez, on a eu le cas d'AZF en France et c'était en 2001. Ça a été terrible. Il y a eu plus de 30 morts et plus de milliers de blessés parce que là, le problème, c'était la sous-traitance. C'est-à-dire qu'il y avait 7 chaînes de sous-traitance. Il y avait une entreprise qui travaillait mais qui sous-traitait à plein de personnes. Et donc, il n'y avait pas de formation. Et là, il y a eu un accident, justement, par un facteur humain.
Mr. Áder suggests that people should be warned if they're living near the plant. I mean, I think you'd go along with that. But the problem is, if you do that, wouldn't you have people not wanting to live anywhere near an industrial plant of that nature? I mean, people would stay away, wouldn't they? They wouldn't live near a plant like that.
Alors, justement, le problème de cette directive, c'est si elle est très dangereuse et qu'il y a des risques d'inhalation. Vous voyez, on respire les substances toxiques. Ou on est perturbé d'un point de vue cutané. Eh bien, il faut établir des périmètres de protection. Il ne faut pas que les gens construisent. Et pourquoi les pays bloquent ? Parce qu'ils veulent construire au fur et à mesure, vous voyez, très près des installations. Et c'est là où la Commission et le Parlement refusent en disant, si c'est très à risque, il faut des périmètres de sécurité où on interdise aux autorités et aux maires pour construire. Et en même temps, un maire, il ne veut pas informer trop sa population. Parce que si on dit, dans ma ville, j'ai une installation à risque, les gens ne voudront pas venir. Donc, vous voyez, il faut qu'on trouve un compromis. Et pour l'instant, les Polonais ne voulaient pas l'avoir. Ils n'ont pas, vous voyez, mis leur énergie pour avoir ce compromis. Et j'espère qu'au niveau des Danois, on arrivera à trouver un compromis. Parce que c'est très important, d'une part, qu'on limite les risques, et d'autre part, que la population soit informée des risques, et surtout, la façon dont ils doivent se comporter en cas d'accident.
Yeah, of course, the trouble is that all the countries want to have all the industry and all the jobs and all the profits from them, but they don't necessarily want to drive them away to places overseas. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. My thanks to both my guests today, Theodoros Skylakakis and Michèle Rivasi. That's 7 Days in Europe. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.